We'll call it back, and Senator Rist, you had
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Mr. Praetz.
Mr. Praetz, I really just wanted, with the first questions, just wanted to know, not necessarily a comparison with Minnesota, but is it, in your professional opinion, does Illinois have sophisticated and up-to-date election equipment?
So, thank you for bringing that question to me again. I'll note that comparatively, when it comes to the state voter registration list, Illinois is what's called a bottom-up state. Each of our 108 election authorities have their own voter registration database, and they share information up with a statewide system, and the statewide system shares information down. And that's why the breach in 2016 wasn't felt in the same way at the local levels. As I understand it, this state is constructed differently. It's a top-down system where all of the locals, every one of the counties, is relying entirely upon the state technology infrastructure for the voter registration database. So from that respect, it's a much more high-value target than Illinois, and the consequences of a successful breach are more significant, certainly. With respect to voting equipment, I think this, I don't know exactly the state of play in Minnesota, but in Illinois, most of the state is relying on technology that was purchased with HAVA funds in the early 2000s. There's paper and there's paper audit trails, and so you can do audits and reconstruct an election if you had to at a significant price if the software systems were taken down. But they're very difficult to defend. They're relying on software that isn't supported by technology companies anymore. They're relying on hardware where replacement parts aren't easy to get. So, you know, you invest, in my opinion, in defense to decrease the probability of a bad action occurring. At the same time, you build plans for if it does happen. Failures to invest in election equipment, in software that runs statewide voter registration systems, that doesn't guarantee a bad occurrence, but it does increase the likelihood that it happens.
Senator Rist.
Mr. Chairman, my third question has two parts. Does Illinois have provisional balloting?
Yes, ma'am.
Was the acquisition of the funds as agreed to, as you indicated, by both parties and your executive, was there any negotiation on what it would take to get that? Because we've heard pretty strong rumors that the HAVA money is worth about $5 million if only the governor and the legislature would agree to provisional balloting. So that's the price.
Okay.
Provisional balloting, you get the HAVA money. In Illinois, was there any other kind of negotiation on what one side or the other of your political parties or the governor said had to happen, or the money wouldn't be forthcoming to the Secretary of State's office?
Mr. Praetz.
So, to my knowledge, in Illinois, this funding was not used, and the negotiations around it for anything outside of how to secure this cyber infrastructure. So there were no other extraneous, still important, but extraneous matters brought into that negotiation. And I will point out, just in Illinois, we have provisional balloting, but that's because it was a federal requirement of HAVA in 2002. We have subsequently adopted election day registration.
That would be my final question.
So it's my personal opinion that that's a superior insurance instrument than provisional balloting. Since the adoption of election day registration, there's the incidence of provisional balloting has gone down to almost to very small in those places that offer election day registration in precinct. Some of our counties offer Election Day registration only at the central headquarters. And in those counties, there's a little higher incidence of provisional balloting, but that's because it's the primary insurance instrument for a question with respect to a voter's registration.
So, Mr. Praetz.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would just point out then, in Illinois' experience, same-day registration, which Minnesota already has, is superior to provisional balloting, and to adopt that would be a step backward to an inferior policy of election
if I might,
integrity.
Just not, I don't want to
Mr.
wade into
Praetz.
sort of local policy issues too much. I just want to clarify that when I said superior, I was sort of wearing
I
my
said
hat as
superior,
an.
you didn't.
Well, I mean, I thought it was a better insurance instrument, but that as an administrator, if you're able to self-cure on Election Day in precinct and not push work back to the central office, it requires significant resource lift and opens up sort of the local politic machinery. I thought wearing my administrative hat that it was superior, but I certainly don't want to wade into the sort of politics of the state.
And Mr. Praetz, so
Thank you,
what are
Mr.
the
Chair.
what are the items that causes someone with same-day registration to have to cast a provisional ballot? I mean, what are reasons for that? What reasons would there be for that?
So there are a few different things. For example, if you requested a mail ballot and you didn't bring it with you, and some counties will force you to vote a provisional ballot. Others will ask you to sign an affidavit. There's a little bit of a wiggle room in Illinois law on how to do that. The primary one where provisional balloting serves as an additional insurance instrument is there are a handful of folks who would try to register on Election Day, but they might not have the appropriate identification to register on Election Day. And that is the remaining bucket that is tiny, but used statewide.
And Mr. Praetz, what percentage of those provisional ballots end up getting counted then in the election? If how does somebody have to, say the case where you said somebody doesn't have the right identification, what do they have to do, and do these people come back and actually make sure their ballots are counted and valid?
Sure. So there are a number of buckets, but if we want to look just at the bucket of what's called, I think colloquially in our county, was a failed Election Day registration. Of their own volition, very few voters come back to cure that. If there is a super close race and campaigns get involved and start to get the list and chase voters down, then that cure rate goes up. But it's low single digits in my recollection.
So someone that says, like myself, who ran in a special election and lost by 410 votes, not that anyone counts, that could have a big effect on the election.
Well, so the incidence of failed Election Day registration probably statewide wasn't even half of that. It's a really tiny number of voters that can't produce the IDs necessary to register in Illinois. And we've got a fairly, I don't know if liberal or progressive sort of registration rules, but it certainly doesn't require a state issued driver's license. So two pieces of documentation, one showing current address is what it takes, and nearly every voter is able to do that.
Do you, Mr. Praetz, we have a vouching system in our state. Do you have that in yours for same-day registration?
Not for same-day registration, no.
Thank you, Mr. Representative Dehn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this will be a question in the end for you, Mr. Praetz. So Senator Kiffmeyer was recently quoted as saying, people are being hacked all the time. You're being hacked all the time. I am. This is no big deal, unquote. So looking back at 2016 in Illinois, which your experience with the, Russians' attempt at breaking into the system, would you think that was no big deal?
Mr. Praetz.
I do think what happened in 2016 and what we expect to happen in the future is a very big deal. with respect to the first part of the comment, I think it's true our entire society is being socialized to recognize that there are these threats out there, that we've all got to take some responsibility in the area to protect our data, to protect our systems. You'll see in airports and on billboards along the road suggestions that individuals should protect themselves from cyber criminals. And so with respect to that original frame to that comment, you know, I agree this is happening everywhere. What's different about elections is the threat actors are significantly more powerful. The consequences of success are potentially devastating. And because of that, I think it is a big deal.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just so I'm sort of understanding the extent of this threat, to withhold or to not allocate $6.6 million, which would help our system in the state of Minnesota to be protected. You know, it seems that you would want to do everything you can to protect the system as best you can with the resources that you have access to. So maybe this is more of a statement than a question, but, you know, I mean, I take some personal precautions to try to make sure that my data and things are safe and secure. And I would hope that we would do everything we could at the state to make sure that happens as well. And when I keep thinking about Minnesota being one of the 50 states who's yet to have this money to be put in place to try to help protect our elections, I'm not a computer whiz, would never even think about hacking, but if I would go after the one of 50 versus the other 49. Would that be a good assumption for me to make?
Mr. Praetz.
So, in some ways, these are sort of crimes of opportunity. Deploy the least resources sort of possible, scanning various websites and infrastructure, and getting into the easiest one to get into. When we talk to local election officials around the country, we have the same conversation, or I do. A tiny county would say, I don't have a stoplight. Why would the Russians come after me? And we say, in Illinois, I would share that they're not coming after you. They're coming after anybody whose windows are unlocked, and yours happen to be. These are crimes of opportunity. So to the extent you're not locking your windows or your doors, or investing in infrastructure improvement, the chances of something bad happen are higher than in places where we are making those investments. And that's just sort of for routine attacks. I think the advanced persistent threat with a direct target on any place is, you know, the probability of success for them and consequences for our side go up significantly.
Representative Carlson, or Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I just promoted you.
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions for Mr. Praetz. I participated in the interim meetings that Secretary of State Simon had to define and clarify what actions he was going to take. And one of them that particularly struck me was that he was concerned about access into the system, and one of those actions is to install multi-factor authentication. And, you know, of course, that has to be trained, and what we have is one system across the state, and if you get in, you're in. And so you're in across the state generally. And I'm wondering, if you can share, if this isn't a confidential answer, what was the doorway that they got into the system?
Mr. Praetz.
So in Illinois, you've got the statewide voter registration system. Again, I worked for the county, and so I'm just passing on, I guess, my understanding of sort of public reporting. But they also have a copy of it that is online that enables things like online registration or voter lookup. And so the access was to that sort of secondary system, which is, mirrors the primary statewide voter registration database, but it was to the kind of the online tool. So the access was from far away.
So,
It wasn't through any county node.
So, Mr. Praetz, it sounds a lot like when Target Corporation here got hacked. My understanding from the news reports is that somebody got into a vendor of theirs through their system and were able to then get into the Target system and steal a bunch of information.
So through the HVAC.
Yeah, and so, Representative Carlson.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so once they were in, are you aware whether they were downloading information or whether they actually tried to change information? What was the nature of their
It's undisputed that they were exfiltrating data and just pulling voter records. And there's disagreement as to what that number is. There are different numbers in the Mueller indictments versus what sort of Illinois' own investigation and finding had ultimately in the tens of thousands of pieces of data that were taken. Illinois was able to identify, I think, clearly somewhere near 10,000 individuals that triggered the notification rules for data breaches. No data was successfully changed, although my recollection is that they were reporting that there were attempts to write new data to the database as opposed to just taking data, although that's a much sort of more difficult thing to do.
Senator Carlson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I got it right that time.
I probably have a couple of other questions, but I have one more that I have written down here. Of your work in Cook County and in Illinois, what's the current status of that work, and what's the schedule, and is it complete or is it partially complete? What's the current situation to getting these actions taken? And by the way, I do see that you have twice as much money as Minnesota does.
Yeah, no, that's true. And
Mr. Praetz.
There are some costs that are sort of fixed regardless of the state. So think about a statewide voter registration database. That may cost, $1 to $2 million to repair, and that's true no matter the size of the state. Once you deduct that, the available funds to put into other infrastructure is less. So yeah, Illinois got probably twice as much, 13.8 or 8 or so. Now, as I understand it, our State Board of Elections, responsible for the statewide voter registration database, obviously corrected all the vulnerabilities that they knew about. They do work with the Department of Homeland Security and with the state infrastructure and information technology services to do continuous scanning of the websites, looking for new vulnerabilities and getting notified of those. But as you may imagine, the elections field changes so fast. We joined a group called ERIC, and all of a sudden we're trading data with now I think 25 or other states. New laws come online and they say people can automatically register to vote when they go to the Department of Natural Resources, get a gun license, or when they're applying for unemployment benefits. And we tie in all these new systems to our statewide voter registration database. These are great service offerings. It's what we expect today, but it also, as our voters expect, but it also increases costs. It increases risk points. This is why I think the language a lot of colleagues were using was the $380 million was important, but it may sort of be a down payment. In order to get to the heart of all these problems and get you where you want to be and make it sustainable, we need to be looking at whole of government investment, local, state, federal, at rates significantly higher than the $380 million that was given.
Unfortunately, again, there's another call to House. As you know, the legislature's in session right now, and I don't know if they're just having fun with us, but maybe they think I need more exercise running up and down. So we're in recess.